So now think about money. In the Constitution, it says that Congress shall have the power to coin money and fix a standard of weights and measures. To fix a standard of weights and measures. What is money? What is money? Now, I have, under the Constitution, the right to acquire and retain and use my property. Now, as I'm driving in here, you probably saw them as well. There's a big herd of longhorn cattle coming up the highway. It's really cool to see, right? Now, I could raise cattle, and that's my property, or I can raise hay, and that's my property, and I can carry bales of hay around with me, and if I want to have lunch and this nice sandwich that we have for us, I can take a bale of hay with me and say, here's a bale of hay, would you give me a sandwich? And that's my property. And I can trade that property for something else. I can bring a longhorn cow with me when I go, and I can take that longhorn cow and trade it for things, or I can take the representation of my liberty and my property in the form of money, in the form of a fixed standard, that I can take my property that I have a right to, that if I don't have property, if I have liberty but not property, that still leaves me a slave, George Sutherland said. But the Constitution said we should have a fixed standard. We should have a reliable standard. Otherwise, our property, what does it mean? If I take my longhorn cow or my bale of hay and I turn it into something and it's a moving sidewalk that keeps going the other way, is my property secure? It's not, is it? So what are we seeing now? What are we seeing today? I pulled one out. This is an eagle from 1906, and then I've got just a more modern silver eagle. But think about this. This was money. We used to have that fixed standard for property, for the representation of my liberty, the representation of my property, the representation of my efforts. We had a fixed standard. Originally 371¼ grains of silver. And then we had a representation that was fixed in gold. And by 1920, for example, this was $20. And it had a recognized value of $20. It had an intrinsic value as well. And for this $20 in 1920, I could get a suit and a tie and shoes, kind of like I'm wearing today. For $20, for this piece of gold, this representation of my property, I could be outfitted quite well. Now let's think about that moving sidewalk. Where are we today? The $20 that this is denominated in, I can't buy the necktie. Let alone the socks or the shoes or the belt or anything. I can't even get the necktie with this today. On the face value. Now the gold value, the intrinsic value, probably somewhere, what, 12,000 or so, right? Or 1,200 or so right now? I could pretty much get this whole outfit and buy lunch and get an extra pair of shoes and a couple more ties. With the value, the worth of this representation of my property and my liberty and my efforts. Now, even on the worth, this may have even additional worth because of its rarity. That may go even higher than that. But think about what that means. What happened to the value? Where did it go? This had that value. Where did it go? Well, we kind of know that, don't we? We have in the New Deal era, they had kind of a mantra, and it really hasn't ever gone away. It's kind of picking up steam. Their mantra was tax and tax, spend and spend, elect and elect. Tax and tax, spend and spend, elect and elect. Think about what's happening in Congress. As long as we can tax and dole out and we get elected and lather, rinse, repeat. We keep spending and get elected and lather, rinse, and repeat. And the debt goes from $1 trillion in 1980 to 10 trillion to right now, we're right on the verge of blowing right through $20 trillion in debt. Well, debt is just another tax, right? We're just saying to these young folks that are out here, you'll pay that tax later. We want it now, you'll pay the tax later. Now, the other way that we do it is we say, we're just going to print more money. We'll take the value of this. Now, taxing is taking the value because we're saying this today, we're going to take away more from people later. But then what they've done more recently is more insidious. We're just going to take the value out from under your liberty and your property. We're going to take that moving sidewalk and we're going to turn it on high and run that back while you keep trying to accumulate and store and use your liberty and property, the representation of which is in money. We're going to run that moving sidewalk back against you at high speed. And that's what we're seeing in the erosion of value. But that's where the value's going. I mean, people today are trying to figure out what's going on. I'm making more money than I ever made in my life, and I'm working harder and harder, and they're kind of looking around going, who's watching me? And we're trying to grab our bag and keep moving faster and faster and harder against that moving sidewalk going the wrong way, not realizing what the problem is and not thinking that, hey, I'm going to get off this silly system. This isn't the system that conveys me to peace and prosperity in any way at all. And that's where we are. That's where we find ourselves today.